Welcome to Spenny and the Nets, the number one Brooklyn Nets podcast in the entire fucking universe. I am your host, Spen Harris. I am joined by my younger, dumber brother, Nick, who's also my co-host. How are we doing today, Nick?
I'd like to do an official IQ test to verify that statement you just made.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that. And before we get started, I want to apologize to all the listeners for the technical difficulties yesterday. Thankfully, you can hear us today, and I'm very excited to get into it. We have a lot to talk about, Nick. For starters, we're going to open up the show with a little segment I like to call Hot Nets Gossip.
Okay.
Yeah, so the latest gossip surrounding the Brooklyn Nets is per Shams Charania, the Brooklyn Nets are open to trading Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Dennis Schroeder.
So just everyone.
Officially, those three guys are on the trade block. And in terms of teams that may be interested, we have the Golden State Warriors are interested in all three players. Here is the report from Shams Charania. The Nets have received trade interest and opened exploratory conversations around forwards Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith and guard Dennis Schroeder, sources said. The Warriors are among the teams that have expressed interest in those three players, sources have said. What are your thoughts?
I think you've been mispronouncing Dennis Schroeder's name for like years. The two dots over the O in German make an oo sound. And you've said Schroeder. And every time I try to like subtly imply it's Schroeder, you don't say anything.
Well, instead of subtly applying, you can just tell me when we're off air. That's a way to resolve the issue.
You watch the games, you listen to the commentators, you know.
You watch the games too. This is a Nets podcast, so I would like to think
if you watch the game.
Oh, if
anyway,
you watch,
okay. Yeah.
Before you move forward, Margaret Schroeder is a main character in Boardwalk Empire, and that's the reason why I use the pronunciation Dennis Schroeder. But from now on,
the same way, and she's from Germany.
I don't think so, and she's not from Germany. She's Irish in Boardwalk Empire.
I mean,
from now on,
I'll listen to the phonetic spell.
I will stop mispronouncing his name, Dennis Schroeder.
We'll listen to it and see if that's correct. But I'm like 95% sure. I'm not surprised, but I guess I'm slightly surprised at Cam Johnson. We spoke about this before because he's still pretty young and he's like hitting his peak right now, which I know means his trade value is at its highest. But when a guy's playing that well, you can't help but want him on your team. Schroeder, I'm not surprised about. That dude gets thrown into every trade. He's been on like 6 teams. He gets bopped around. And right now, he's crushing it right now, too. He's not the guy you're trying to build around, so might as well get as much as you can out of him. And DFS, I don't think he ever actually performed to what we wanted him to when he came to Brooklyn. So really no emotional attachment to him whatsoever. Wasn't he starting when he got here, and then he got demoted to a bench role now?
I mean, he's not on the bench. When he's healthy, he starts. He has dealt with some injuries this season, which I think has kind of messed up his shooting rhythm a little bit. So that is that's a little bit difficult in terms of him getting into a rhythm. But when he's healthy, he does start on this Nets team. He is the starting 4.
All right. Well, to summarize, Johnson, Smith, Schroeder, care, don't care, don't care.
So I'm happy to trade all those guys. They're not going to be on the team next year, unfortunately. And we've talked about this in previous podcasts. They're all playing to audition where they're going to play next season, including Cam Johnson. And that actually leads me to my next segment. Before I move forward, I would love Jonathan Kuminga on this Nets team. I think he'd be a really interesting piece to get back. Look, the Warriors and Mike Dunleavy Jr., their GM, they're trying to win now. Right? They have to maximize whatever years Steph Curry has left. So in terms of trading away a Kuminga and getting back a Cam Johnson and getting back a Dennis Schroeder, and you give us some first round picks as well, that can be a very enticing move for the Brooklyn Nets. In terms of the next segment, I want to this segment's called So Hot Right Now. And you brought up Cam Johnson. He's so hot right now, man. Like in Zoolander when they say Hansel, so hot right now. You familiar with the Zoolander movie?
I am, yes.
That's Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson is one of the hottest players in the NBA right now. There is a clip from Brian Windhorst's podcast with Tim McMahon, where literally Windhorst asks Tim McMahon who the most attractive trade prospect is. And Tim McMahon's response is that it's Cam Johnson. And I'm sorry, that's not, let's see. Oh no, that is from Cam Johnson. I'm sorry, that is from Tim McMahon. But just very interesting. Like last season, you would never think Cam Johnson's trade value would be this high. But you have guys on legitimate NBA podcasts asking if you were a GM, who's the player you'd want to trade for the most, and their response is the Nets starting small forward. I think that's incredible.
It's incredible for us in terms of value, yeah. But like realistically, who are we getting for Cam Johnson? Right, we're going to get a bunch of picks from a lot of teams, but we're almost implying like, oh, we could get a B plus A minus caliber player for Cam Johnson. I don't see that being the case. I see picks for Cam Johnson, but you think something like, I mean, would you even want Kuminga for Johnson? That doesn't feel like a fair trade. With a couple picks, I guess.
Yeah, with a couple picks.
I don't know.
Also, you got to realize that Kuminga's going to want a big contract soon. So that's the other thing. Like if the Nets do trade for him and they play him a lot and he balls out, the Nets might have to pay him a lot of money. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Kuminga's only 22 years old. So, I mean, I guess I'm even going to go back on my own statement of being skeptical. Cam's 28. Yeah, you throw in a couple picks up there, and I'm open to that. But I am surprised at how highly people are valuing Cam Johnson after one. It's funny how one good year, it's such like goldfish brain in sports.
Well, not even one good year. We're talking about 1/3 of the season. We're talking about
right.
one good 1/3 of the season.
One solid third of a season, and now this guy is a top trade commodity. That's pretty ironic to me.
I mean, we're going to get into the last two games the Nets have played later in the episode against the Bucks and the Pacers, and we're going to go over his stats. You're going to see why teams want him. The only other person I wanted to bring up in So Hot right now, and this isn't a Brooklyn Nets player, this is Timothy Chalamet. I mean, I just want to go over some stuff with you. He's coming out with A Complete Unknown, in which it's a movie in which he stars as Bob Dylan, one of the great songwriters of our parents' generation. He goes on College Game Day last week and just spouts sports knowledge. And I think he went 4-2 with his college picks. And now there's an old video resurfacing when he was a kid. And Landry Fields and Andy Routens found him. They were looking for fans to ask trivia questions to win a prize. And Tim Chalamet, they called him Tim at the time, he found them at Grand Central and he answered 2 trivia questions to win Knicks tickets or to win some sort of prize. And there's a picture of like an 8-year-old Timothy Chalamet with Landry Fields and Andy Routens. I mean, I can't think of someone who's hotter than Tim Chalamet right now.
Yeah, I mean, I like Timothy Chalamet, great actor. I was actually pleasantly surprised by Wonka. After I loved Gene Wilder in the original so much. But what I will say is there's another kid who came out of LaGuardia High School around the same time, and that was Jackson Hinden, who I would argue is more talented than Timothy Chalamet. Jackson, of course, lead singer, and I mostly blame myself, the sketch comedy group Off-Broadway in New York City. But yeah, I respect Tim Chalamet. Cool guy.
All right. Real fast, we're going to go to the fans. Paulo Benzon writes, would you prefer to keep newly signed Ji Tashui from the Guangzhou Luang Lions? He's on the Brooklyn Nets, hasn't played a ton this year, but he's sort of a developmental piece. So would we prefer to keep him and develop him for the future or move him for a more complete now piece? Paulo, interesting question. My answer is I don't think his trade value is very high right now. I don't think that there are teams in the NBA that are calling the Nets and saying, hey, we want to trade for Jackie Shui on the end of the bench. So I guess if you're the Nets, you keep him. You try to give him some minutes in the second half of the season when you're essentially not going to have any vets to play and hope that he can show out. And maybe, you can trade him next year, sign him to a 1 or 2 year contract, trade him in the next few seasons. But right now he has no trade value. So that's my
a really
answer.
good question. I think you got to put him on the court first and see what he can do. But yeah, we believe in the underdogs. Give this guy a shot.
Give him a shot. All right, Nick, let's get into the Nets' last 2 games. So not a lot of Nets basketball in the last 6 or 7 days since we last recorded. We're going to start with a Sunday game. At 3:30 p.m., it was a 118-113 loss to the Milwaukee Bucks at home. And Nick, I was at this basketball game.
I heard you brought a friend.
I did bring a friend. So I want to give you guys a little bit of an inside look at my Nets viewing experience. It's been about 2 years since I last went to a game at the Barclays Center. The last game I went to, it was right before the Nets traded James Harden. So actually, Kyrie was out because he didn't want to get the vaccine shot. KD had been hurt, and James Harden was sitting out. So I saw the Celtics beat the Nets in the Barclays Center by 50. And that was the last game. I don't know if it was it might have been by 30, but it felt like 100. That was the last game I went to at the Barclays Center. That was about 2.5 years ago. So first game in a while. Shout out to superfan Doug Barrick for the sweet tickets. Doug is part of the Brooklyn Brigade. They're one of the biggest known Nets fan groups at Barclays Arena. They sit in the last several rows right behind one of the baskets. So I was sitting with the Brooklyn Brigade, and they're awesome. They have some great moments in which they chirp the opposing team. At one point, one of the guys in the brigade, he yelled at Dame Lillard, "Hey, Dame, it looks like your watch is broken," which I thought was a pretty good chirp.
Pretty
old
good.
friend of
I mean, it's more effective if he actually got Dame to look down at his wrist, but it's a cool chirp.
It's a cool chirp. Old friend of mine came with me. Shout out to Boz from Vegas. He's my guy in Las Vegas. We went to Patsy's before the game. Very well-known pizzeria. There's a few locations in Manhattan. There's one in Brooklyn. Really good coal-fired bar pie. Split a chicken Caesar salad. The large pizza was half sausage, half plain. And we had some tequila seltzers before the game. So just overall, really good time. Keith, that's Boz's first name. He had never been to a game before. So he really enjoyed himself at the Barclays Center. And yeah, so those are my takeaways from the fan experience. I can't wait to go back. But, this was a much better, even though the Nets lost, they competed. We're going to get into the game in a second, but I'm excited to go to more games in the future now that I'm well removed from that terrible viewing experience a few years ago.
You know what sounds better than watching a Brooklyn Nets game these days? Getting some New York coal-fired pizza and watching a Timothy Chalamet movie. This should actually become a Timothy Chalamet pod.
I'd still prefer the Nets game to Timothy Chalamet. I mean, I'd rather watch the Brooklyn Nets lose by 5 at home to Milwaukee than watch Wonka.
If Timothy Chalamet had to play one NBA player in a movie, who do you think he'd play?
Duncan Robinson.
Joe Harris?
Maybe Joe Harris. All right, so takeaways from the actual game. Nick Claxton was really impressive in this game. He was a lot more involved in the offense in the first 3 quarters. I would have liked to see him be more involved in that fourth, but Claxton finished 21 points and 10 rebounds from the field, 9 of 14. He's 9 of 14 in terms of field goals, and then he was 3 of 3 from the free throw line, so nice to see that. Claxton on his performance via Eric Slater. I'm just getting my flow back. That's just me playing more games, my body, everything just starting to come together. I need to be more aggressive, especially right now with Cam Thomas being out and us missing some scoring. So, Nick, what did you think of Nick Claxton's performance in this one?
I thought it was fantastic. But I will say those performances are kind of far and few these days for Nick Claxton. I know we're developing a lot of younger guys. We're giving Clowney a lot of minutes. When Day'Ron Sharp's healthy, we throw him in. Claxton has been hurt a few games too. But this is the performance, I think, after 5-6 years that you expect from him every night, every other night, just putting up more consistent numbers. So nice to see. Obviously wasn't enough in this effort against the Bucks, who are pretty hot right now in their last 10 to 12 games. I think 13 and 11 now after beating the very talented Orlando Magic last night. So listen, again, cool to see, but my biggest complaint with Claxton has always been consistency, and he always shows signs of greatness, but can't do it every night. So take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of Clax, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 9.8. He's averaging 9.8 points per game. So obviously 21, well above his average. I don't think him averaging 21 points per game is realistic, but I'd like to see him closer to that 15, 16 points per game number. He is, Clowney's been hurt. He's been dealing with injuries. Day'Ron Sharp just came we've had to start Zaire Williams at the center position at times this year. So just nice to see Clax finally have a solid game. Hopefully he can build off this. But the real star of the show for the Brooklyn Nets was Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder. 34 points in 34 minutes, 13 of 19 from the field, 11 assists, really took over at times for the Nets. They really kind of need him to come through right now offensively with Cam Thomas missing, and boy, oh boy, did he ever. Really, really fun to see him when he's kind of taking control of the offense, and he's playing smart basketball. I mean, Nick, I told you this stat yesterday. I just wanted to repeat it. Schroeder is the 5th player in Nets franchise history to post 30-plus points and 10-plus assists with 0 turnovers in a game. He joins Jason Kidd, James Harden, Stephon Marbury, and Sam Cassell as the only Nets to ever do that. Shout out to Eric Slater again for this tidbit. Just a really strong game from Schroeder.
Yeah, and I will point out, and we got some questions in the comments if you want to check them out while I speak. I was talking last week how Schroeder turns the ball over more than we'd like, especially in the last few weeks before this most recent Bucks game. Finds himself caught under the rim a lot of the time and throws it away, gets the ball stolen, gets himself up in the air and gets caught. So really nice to see him put up a stat line like this. I will say, though, and tell me if you disagree, Schroeder looks like he kind of pushes the ball when he takes threes, when he takes jump shots. If he's in rhythm, kind of with like a little fader, 8 to 10 feet, it looks more natural. But it almost feels like a little kid pushing the ball forward when he takes a three-pointer. Surprisingly, it's been going in a lot. But I always see him shooting like you kind of don't like the way the shot looks when it leaves his hands. Sometimes, and a lot of the time these days, it works for him. But I just don't like the way his shot looks.
Ugly jump shot. It's been going in this year. I agree with you. It is kind of a weird sort of, and it's not, because it doesn't look like it's fluid. It's not fluid. It doesn't look like it's a quick shot, but he gets it off relatively quickly. So say what you will about Schroeder's jump shooting form. It's been going in this year, and he's been playing some really good basketball. All right, so Paulo Bengzon with another question. He writes, bit of a log jam at center with Noah Clowney, Day'Ron Sharpe, Clack sharing minutes at the 5. What direction do you think the organization goes in terms of solidifying this spot? If they move Clacks, is the fan base content with having Clowney and or Sharpe filling the role for the foreseeable future?
It's a long question.
What I will say is this. Noah Clowney is not a 5. Noah Clowney is a 4. I don't think he will, unless he bulks up and gains like 50 pounds of muscle, I don't think he's going to be a 5 in this league. I think he's going to be a power forward for the majority of his career. So I don't think he's part of that logjam at the center position. Now, in terms of moving on from either Claxton or Day'Ron, I've actually been seeing Sharpe's name as a name to watch before the trade deadline. I think there are a lot of teams that can use Sharpe, who's on a not super expensive contract, as a backup center. I've been seeing teams like the Memphis Grizzlies, I think the Clippers. Those are names to watch out for teams that might call about Day'Ron Sharpe. Nick Claxton just got paid. I'm not sure how many teams want to trade the Nets for that contract. So in terms and also, as I mentioned up to this point, all three of those guys have not really been healthy at the same time. So we haven't seen the Nets front court in its entirety really almost at any time this season. So that's my answer to that question. And I don't think they're gonna move Clax. If they do, I think the fan base would be okay with it because of the way the Nets are trying to rebuild.
The only thing I'll add is I like Clowney. I don't like Sharpe. If you're asking me who I want to keep on this roster after Claxton, of course, I like Clowney. I like the player he's developing into. I don't think Sharpe is ever a guy who's going to be a contributor on a contending team, personally.
And I will say this. Nick Claxton, I believe, is the longest tenured Net. He was drafted by the organization. He's the first Net in a while to get a big contract. So, Cam Thomas hasn't been paid yet. He's a free agent at the end of this year. I don't see the Nets moving on from Nick Claxton at this point.
I also want to clarify, when you say he's a 4 or a 5, you're talking about his position, not his
position,
looks.
Yeah,
which I would say looks-wise, he's probably around an 8 or a 9.
Oh, yeah. Claxton's definitely a handsome guy. Back to the Milwaukee Nets game. Another strong outing from Cam Johnson. 26 points, 9 of 16 from the field.
Mean the hottest trade commodity in the league?
That's exactly who I mean, Nick. No, he put on. He was 4 of 8 from 3, 4 of 4 from the line. What I like about it is, he's not just getting it from the 3-point line. He's taking it to the rack. He's making the right read. I think this was his second game in a row. Yeah, where he had 26 points. He had 26 points in the win against the Pacers, but he is becoming consistently the best offensive player for the Nets in terms of availability and in terms of consistency.
Yeah, we can talk about Cam Johnson. We can go in circles, but
I'd rather go in a square.
Fantastic. Playing unbelievably well. It's the irony of wanting to get a good trade for him, but once he starts playing well, you actually end up wanting to keep him on your roster. So props to Cam Johnson after last year, after a couple years on the Suns, where you never thought he'd step into that 1 or 2 role, and he has well, especially this season.
Ben Simmons did absolutely nothing in this game. 0 points, no field goal attempts, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist. And the 1 assist was like a really cool skip bounce pass to Cam Johnson where he threaded the needle and Cam made the 3.
It was a cool pass. It was a cool pass.
It was a cool pass. I was annoyed because obviously being at this game, this was the first game I've ever watched Ben Simmons up close and personal. I wanted to see a few highlights, maybe 2 to 3 really cool highlights, and I saw a nifty bounce pass as his only contribution to the game.
Well, if we're speaking mathematicals, he needed to score 6 points for the Nets to win. Ben Simmons, on his 30, 40 gajillion $million contract a year, needed to score 6 points, and the Nets would have beat the Milwaukee Bucks, who are a top 5 team in the East. And yet Ben Simmons could not put up a single bucket. And I'm reminded of those highlights when he played the Sixers, when he's bricking layups off the backboard like a big old moron, and he can't actually put the ball in the hoop. The dude's like 6'10". He doesn't have to jump, and he can't score 6 points. It's pathetic, bro.
I'm not going to sit here and insult the man's intelligence.
You know who I'd rather have than Ben Simmons?
Who?
Johnny Simmons, the actor.
I'm not familiar with his work.
He used to date Emma Watson. Never mind. You know, he's so irrelevant. That's how much more irrelevant Ben Simmons is to Johnny Simmons.
Ben Simmons was a -5 in this game. The Nets lost by 5. So what does that tell you? In terms of the overall game, this was the perfect scenario because the Nets competed. They played the Bucks hard for 3 quarters. They finished the third and fourth quarters terribly. The Bucks ended the game on a 14-5 run. The Bucks bench accounted for 60 points in this game. Bobby Portis 23, Gary Trent 20, Middleton had 11, and AJ Green had 6. Not AJ Green.
That's former receiver for the Bengals?
That's not who that is. No, it is AJ Green. That's his name.
I think his name is also AJ Green.
AJ Green, fuck.
Hollow asked, did I mean Johnny Sins? I did
no,
not.
We did not mean Johnny Sins.
But a good reference.
We know who Johnny Sins is. So the Bucks outscored the Nets bench 60-18. I will say the Bucks did not look like a contender in the East against us right now. However, in that game against the Magic, where Dame Time took over and he won that game for them, they did look a little bit better. I do think that they need to make a trade or two to really bolster that starting 5. I think it's a little bit weak, especially if they're going to bring Portis off the bench. Maybe get someone like a Cam Johnson. But from what I've read, in terms of Nets updates, I don't think the Nets are a team that want to help out the Bucks. And do you know why that is, Nick?
Why?
They want to make themselves available for if Giannis Antetokounmpo requests the trade and wants to come play in Brooklyn. That is why the Nets do not want to help bolster the Bucks roster.
It also might be because they gave them Brook Lopez and then they won a championship. So
you're wrong. Brook Lopez went to LA from the Nets.
He was on the Lakers?
He was part of the D'Angelo Russell deal.
Well, then he ended up on the Bucks and won a championship.
Okay, I do want to give my weekly praise of love to Jordy Fernandez. So the one word that I freaking, I worship Jordy on, that he just is accountability. Jordy Fernandez holds his players accountable no matter what. Whether they're tanking, whatever the motivation and mindset of this organization is, Jordy Fernandez does not care. He holds guys accountable. So here were his comments after the loss to Milwaukee. The reality is, in the last 3 minutes of the third and last 6 minutes of the game, it was a -19 for us. Our defense was atrocious. And if our guys that want to wear a Brooklyn Nets jersey don't play hard defense, they don't have a place on our roster. Nick, he does not care that Giannis plays basketball like a fullback. and that most teams in the league have no answer for Giannis, right? Giannis had 34 points himself, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists. He was 14 of 22 from the field. He was 6 of 10 from the line. Just because Giannis is one of the most unstoppable forces in the game of basketball, Jordy Fernandez isn't gonna say, well, Giannis is a tough cover. He holds his guys accountable. This is the type of quote that you and I would never hear from Steve Nash, from Kevin Ollie, or from Jacques Vaughn.
What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object?
What?
I don't know. I was trying to think of if Giannis is unstoppable force, who's the immovable object? Dayron.
Jordy Fernandez?
Yeah. Listen, I like our weekly blow sessions of Jordy Fernandez. He's a pretty good coach.
You're not using blow in the way that NBA players and coaches use blow. Please use any other word.
Right. I like our weekly Johnny Sins, Jordy Fernandez sessions. But yeah, man, he came here to build an organization from the ground up. You could tell that's his game. You could tell he respects the game. He does not cut these players slack. Listen, it's easier said than done with a young team, right? Like you look at a team of veterans like the LA Lakers, and who do you throw coaching them, right? Tyronn Lue, Frank Vogel, JJ Redick, whoever it is.
Tyronn Lue never coached the Lakers.
I'm pretty sure he was at the Lakers.
Darvin Ham. No. Tyronn Lue was the Cleveland Cavaliers coach. Then he was the Clippers coach.
LeBron.
He never coached the Lakers. Yeah.
Okay, I meant he coached LeBron. But either way, my point being, it's easier to coach a team of young guys you're developing and to actually be hard on them, than to come in on a veteran team. So, yes, Jordy Fernandez is doing a great job. With that said, he has a team he's actually able to control and manage as opposed to putting him on a tougher team.
You don't think that Jordy Fernandez would be saying these quotes if he were the coach of the Lakers?
No.
Interesting.
I think he'd be saying whatever LeBron wanted him to say.
Interesting. Okay. All right, and we go all the way back to Wednesday, December 4th, 99-90. The Nets get the win over the Pacers. Really nice W for the Nets against a struggling Pacers team. Cam Johnson was your high man with 26 points. Claxton with a decent game, 16 points, 7 of 8 from the field. Shake Milton, the former Philadelphia 76er, had 15 points off the bench. I got to say, Shake has really played his way into this rotation. He's outplayed guys like Keon Johnson. He's outplayed Jalen Wilson to a certain extent. So shout out to Shake Milton for coming off the bench and just staying ready when his number is called. And then this was a good game for Ben Simmons. Ben had 7 points, 9 assists, and 7 boards off the bench, and he was a plus 20 in this game, Nick.
Tyrese Halliburton, who? Tyrese Halliburton?
Yeah, Tyrese Halliburton's correct. He just has not looked like his all-star self this year. Only 17 points for him, 3 turnovers. He had the Pacers were making a run at the end of that game to try to cut into the Nets' lead, and Dennis Schroeder, Darrell Revis, a pass that Tyrese Halliburton tried to throw up the court and just totally picked him off. And while Schroeder had a bad game shooting-wise, 2 of 11 from the field for just 4 points, that was a really important play that he made down the stretch. The only other net that was in double figures was Jalen Wilson with 11. He's in a bit of a shooting slump, has not shot the 3-ball well, but with Jalen Wilson, you're going to get the effort plays, you're going to get the physicality on offense and defense. Overall, good on the Nets. They had not, prior to this game, the Nets had lost 3 straight against the Magic, and the Bulls. So nice to see them get a win. However, they are 1-4 in their last 5. Not great if you like watching the Nets win basketball games. Decent stretch of basketball if you're rooting for the tank.
Yeah, this Pacers win was nice to see, but again, this Pacers team is nothing special. I don't know why they got Siakam thinking that would make them a contender. Yes, they had a great run last year. They should have beat the Celtics in a few games in those Eastern Conference Finals, but this win isn't anything to brag about. If we had beat the Bucks, I would have felt a lot more confident about it. But yeah, nice to see some players step out of the woodwork. I think Shake had 15 as well, which is always nice to see.
Yeah.
Shaky Shake Milton, Shakey's Pizza Milton. But yeah, good win, ends a little bit of a streak, but need to kind of beat bigger and better teams in order to really make an impact.
Yeah, so the Brooklyn Nets right now, their record is 10-14, which is okay. You look at the rest of the league, and I just want to pull up standings. So the Nets right now, so the Nets are in the 8th spot right now. Pacers are 10-15, Bulls are 10-15, Pistons are 10-15. You have 3 teams with 7 wins, the 76ers, the Hornets, the Raptors, and then the Washington Wizards are at the bottom with 3 wins. In the West, there are only 3 teams with under 12 wins. Those are the Trailblazers, the Utah Jazz, and the New Orleans Pelicans. So if the Nets are trying to get into the lottery, they got to lose some more games, but I don't think they're that far off, Nick. I think that fans that are still worried about that, we're going to trade away a few of these veteran pieces. We are not going to continue winning games. Hopefully we get into that bottom 5, bottom 6, and put ourselves in a decent position for the lottery. Again, I don't root for that when I'm watching the games, but all in all, I would like the best possible draft pick in next year's draft, given the big talent pool at the top of that draft.
Yeah, we got a question too that kind of goes along with that. That says if the Nets playoffs started today, who are the current teams in play-in spots that are threats to the Nets advancing? Bulls, Pacers, Hawks. I don't think any of those. But to add to what Spencer is saying, we don't really want to be in that position. If we end up in that position, we might eke through and be able to beat those teams. I know we could beat the Pacers. I know we could beat the Bulls. Maybe the Hawks, I would say, are our biggest threat. We've had some difficulty with the Hawks in the past, but overall hoping to drop down if you're looking from like the grand scheme of the organization to get a better lottery pick. I don't like doing that. I like winning. I like rooting for a team to win and then hoping they can make a run. But within that like 7th to 11th seed in the East, I think that could be a bunch of different teams. But with that said, we even get to a better spot. There's no way we're contending with the likes of a Celtics, Magic, Bucks. So in the grand scheme of things, we probably should be looking to tank.
I love that you didn't throw the Knicks in there.
I hate the Knicks.
Yeah, me too. All right, so this is our final segment of the show. For all those listening, I do this with Nick every few months. It's called Guess That Net. So, Nick, I'm going to give you 3 clues, and I want you to try to guess. Paulo just wrote, are you just not going to say Knicks in the top 3? I just brought them up, okay? I just referenced them. They're a good basketball team. They're peaking right now. Whatever. Okay, so guess that net. Nick, I'm going to give you 3 clues. Okay, you can guess after each clue, or you can say, give me the next clue. Once you have all 3 clues, you have to make a guess. I have 3 players in mind, so we're going to have 9 clues, but we're going to have 3 for each one player. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, number 1. This power forward played in the NBA from 1989 to 2007, and he was on the Nets from 2004 to 2007. That is your first clue.
Kenyon Martin.
He played from 1989 to 2007.
Derek Coleman.
Can I give you 2 more clues?
All right, next clue.
He won 6th Man of the Year in the 1992-93 season, where he averaged 19.1 points per game and 6.6 rebounds per game off the bench.
Keith Van Horn.
Career average, you're terrible. Career average 14.2 points per game, 4.6 rebounds per game. He was a power forward. I said that in the beginning. He played for the Nets for 3 years at the end of his career. Who is this net?
I don't know.
Clifford Robinson.
No, I wasn't going to get that.
Okay, next one. This guard played for the Nets from 2001 to 2003. Overall, he played in the NBA for 13 years.
Lucius Harris.
Despite not getting much time, he proved to be a strong bench piece during the Nets' run to the finals in 02 and 03. Career average of 5.6 points per game and 2.9 assists per game.
Eddie House.
He was not on the team from 01 to 03.
Don't get mad at me for not knowing the players.
Who was a guard on those early teams who came off the bench?
Zoran Planinic.
Anthony Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Anthony Johnson was the backup to Jason Kidd, for those who remember. Okay. Third player. Please, think before you just blatantly guess. I'll give you all three clues. Number one, this player was drafted by the Nets 15th overall in the 2005 NBA draft. Number two, he played with the Nets from 2005 to 2007 and was traded to Dallas in the 07-08 season. He is a 41% career three-point shooter in 6 years in the NBA.
Marcus Williams.
No.
Fuck.
Forward. Marcus Williams is a guard. This is a forward. He's a three-point shooter.
Boki Nakbar.
Close. You're kind of on the right path, but it's not Boki Nakbar. Do you give up?
Give me the first initial.
Okay, we have a jersey randomly of this player. I think Dad has it at the house. I think it was signed, actually.
We have Jacques Vaughn, we have Kidd, we have Carter.
We don't have Jacques Vaughn. We do not have no one has a Jacques Vaughn jersey in our house.
I actually think we do.
We don't.
I think I do. I don't know. Who is it?
Antoine Wright.
Oh, we do have an Antoine Wright jersey. How is that
okay,
close to Boki Nakbar?
Because they were both like three-point shooters.
Okay.
So Nick goes 0 of 3. The three Nets that we did were Clifford Robinson, Anthony Johnson, and Antoine Wright. And that just about does it for this week's episode of Spenny and the Nets. We thank Paulo Bengzon for asking questions. Real quick, there's a Channel Unsubscribe account. That's the name of the account. It's Channel Unsubscribe. They wrote, Ben Simmons needs to go. Younger guys who care need more minutes. My problem, Channel Unsubscribe, is I don't think that Ben Simmons has any trade value on his contract right now. I don't think there's a team that really wants to inherit that contract, even though I think he's a free agent at the end of this season. And I agree, the younger guys who care need more minutes. A player on the Nets who I'd like to see get more minutes is Dariq Whitehead. He balled out in that Chicago game they lost a few nights ago, I believe. But yeah, there are absolutely young guys on this team, and I think once they make a few trades, there are going to be younger guys on this Nets team that need to see the floor more in that second half of the year. So yeah, I agree. Younger guys need to see more minutes. I think the Nets, while Ben Simmons is there, they're going to play him, but I'm just ready to be done with the Ben Simmons era with the Brooklyn Nets.
I'm with you, brother.
Okay, Nick, before we end the show, any final words to our listeners out there? I know you have a big comedy show coming up.
Yeah, if you're in New York City or the greater New York area, sketch comedy this weekend, best of 2024, the best sketches. You might have seen them online. Helen Keller, Yes Chef. It's a bear parody. A lot of really funny stuff. This is not your normal sketch comedy show. It's big. It's huge. Big production level. Sexy sketches. Sexy people. Come check it out. Use code 50OFF for 50% off your tickets. And listen, guys, it's $40. That cuts it to $20, Spen. That's an affordable ticket for an hour and a half sketch comedy show with the caliber we have. So come check it out.
Listen, it is the Johnny Sins of comedy sketch shows, okay? It's big, it's sexy, how long is it? An hour and a half, you said?
Did you just imply that you find Johnny Sins big and sexy?
Well, that's the narrative around his work. Otherwise, he wouldn't be one of the highest paid people in his profession.
You're not wrong.
Anyway, I'll be at the Friday show for I Mostly Blame Myself. Please check them out. That's Nick's comedy sketch show. They'll be, as he mentioned, having a show this Friday, the 14th? I'm sorry, the 13th, and Saturday, the 14th. So please come check it out at the Players Theater in Manhattan. Paulo writes, Q1 2025, I'll be there with Mr. Sins. Great to see. Thanks to everyone for tuning in to this week's episode of Spenny and the Nets, Ep 208. Please check us out next week. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties yesterday, but I'm just happy that Nick and I were able to give you guys a great pod today.
We live to serve you guys.
and we serve to live. Thanks, and have a good one.
All right. See you later, brother.
It's still live. You gotta wait. It's
All right,
still
see ya,
live.
bud. All right. See you, brother.
See you, brother.